So for me, it's around using sport to be able to, and choosing to watch Formula E is a sustainability choice in my world, because you're picking a sport that has set itself up deliberately to be as least carbon intensive on the planet.
Welcome to The Sustainable Edge, your podcast that moves sustainability beyond talk. You get to hear sharp perspectives and leave with insights you can put into action. I'm your host, Joachim Nahem, and this podcast is produced by Position Green.
Welcome back to Sustainable Edge. Sport moves people at a scale few platforms can match. And when it's linked with sustainability, the impact can be transformative. Formula E's audience is surging, nearly 500 million viewers with broadcasts in more than 150 countries. It's among the fastest growing motorsports, with double-digit fan growth in major markets and record moments like 40 million viewers for its Monaco race. That kind of momentum can shift how millions think about energy, mobility, and everyday choices. I've been waiting to bring this perspective to the show and to find the right guest to tell it well. Today, I'm joined by Jennifer Babington of Envision Racing, leaders in guilt-free motorsport. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me. Very exciting.
So for our viewers and listeners who may not be that familiar with this sport, tell us a little bit more about it. What does it actually do?
So the formula bit kind of gives it away. So it's single-seater cars. These ones are all completely electric. So single-seater electric cars. We race all around the world. Paris, Jakarta, Monaco, Berlin, you name it. We had take the circus there. We race around city circuits, street circuits against each other in a FIA World Championship battle across 16 rounds, usually to crown a winner at the end of the season.
So it's basically Formula One, but with electric.
Guilt-free. I mean, you said it in my introduction, guilt-free Formula One. So so we're racing against the likes of Porsche, Nissan, Jaguar, Mahindra, all of those other great big manufacturers, all battling it out against each other on street circuits.
Awesome. And tell us, how do you see motorsport as a platform for climate advocacy? Because intuitively we say motorsport and climate, obviously it doesn't necessarily resonate, but as electric or EV cars, just tell us sort of how can this be a platform for climate advocacy?
So I think the first most important point is that sport just brings out a passion and an excitement that we all get, right? Like we follow superstars. The most important influential figures in the world today are not, maybe at the moment we're having a swing with Trump and various other things that are going on, but generally the most important figures are it's sports players. People listen to what they're doing. They sell the kit, the merch, the products, etc. So that people are interested in what those sports players say and what those sports players do. So it's that passion and igniting people around something interesting and exciting. They're the highlight peak moments on TV. They're the moments where you get most of the world stopping, desperately waiting to watch the Lionesses win like we did in the summer, etc. So it's definitely that passion moment that I think you get from a sport. And then what we've done as a sport itself, Formula E, is make sure that we've set our sport up to be as sustainable as possible. And I know that in this current climate, using words like sustainable, net zero, etc., that they're not the buzzwords that people want to hear, but the reality is that our sport itself is spec cars. So the chassis and the hardware of the car are all designed to be recycle carbon and reuse. So we don't spend any money on building a new wing or any aero. We have spec tires, so all the tires are the same across the sport. The battery packs are the same batteries across each of the different teams. So really all we're doing as a sport is putting the brains and our minds and the little squishy bit of the driver behind beating each other. So trying to get the maximum efficiency out of it. So for me, it's around using sport to be able to, and choosing to watch Formula E is a sustainability choice in my world, because you're picking a sport that has set itself up deliberately to be as least carbon intensive on the planet.
And I know sustainability has been important for you also prior to your role now. Your background is actually from investing through a green lens. And what has sort of shaped your approach when balancing what we could call financial viability with sustainability in the sport? Because it's obviously, like any other business or platform, it needs to make money, or at the end of the day, at least make money as well. So where does the sort of commercial interest and sustainability come together, also given your previous roles?
Yeah, so my background is a funny one to get me to being kind of ops director and general counsel at Envision Racing. But I came through the city as I came from university through the city as a lawyer, and then I went to an IPP, and I set up and helped develop wind and solar projects around Northern Europe. And then I went to be the chief of staff at the UK Green Investment Bank, where we invested 3.8 billion in renewables projects around the UK alongside Sean Kingsbury and the team that were there at the time. And then kind of coming across from investment banking to a car racing team, exactly right. I took all of those investment principles that we thought through. So how do you make sure that it's the right thing to do? So you have to have a clear mission and a clear vision for what the team's trying to achieve, which I think we've set out for us. We are driving fans to make around to engage around climate action, for EV adoption, and to make sustainable choices. And that's in the essence of what it is that we're trying to achieve as a team. But I think you pose a really interesting question, Joachim. It's that where does the balance sit? And I think it can't be a choice. That for me, the decisions around the green choices that we make as a team have to not only be a good green choice, they also have to be a profitable choice. And often cases they are. It's not a case of making a difficult decision. So, for example, say at the moment for us, we're really working hard on reducing our freight. So if we reduce freight, every kilo we reduce it by, it reduces the price by
freight, you mean in terms of it being a traveling circus, as it were, or everything that you bring to do a show, a race, the sort of the weight and emissions from that. So
we pack, at the end of each race, we pack everything down. So the whole garage structure comes down and all of our cars get taken apart. They're like, I'm going to call them like Lego, but that's really mean to the mechanics who do an incredible job. But they're not Lego, but everything gets. Yeah. Well, I hope so. They're fabulous. But everything gets taken apart and packed down into 2 freight boxes, tiny freight boxes that then get shipped across to around the rest of the ship to the next race. So if we can reduce the amount that we're taking race to race, we can not only reduce the cost for us, but also we can reduce the carbon that we're carting around the world, which has got to be a better thing. So it's a win-win opportunity or win-win option. There are some greener decisions that we take, for example, using a greener print supplier, looking at making sure that we have a greener kit supplier, all of those things, where sometimes there's a financial impact on some of those, but in the longer term, they have to be the right decisions. The broader question, I think, on these things, though, is around the investment into the sport at this point in time. And that's very challenging. In this current environment where people feel to be pulling back from those ESG style investments, feel to be pulling it back a little bit from the frontline sustainability investments, as a sport that is completely managed and survives on sponsorship revenue, commercial sponsorship revenue. So, kind of the logos and the kit and everything else that comes with it. That's a very difficult, challenging, and I think we have to hold the line. We don't want to be taking investment from companies that don't have the same principles as us. And frankly, I feel incredibly strongly about that and have tendered my resignation on 2 occasions when we have looked at having an investment from someone who did not fit a sustainability criteria from my perspective. And
I want to, Jennifer, dig a little bit deeper into this sort of comprehensive approach to net zero or sustainability, because we know, for example, from EVs that, yes, EVs, you can call it net zero in terms of the consumer and the actual emissions from that car, but there's more that goes into it, right? It is the assembly of this, it's the supply chain, and you're alluding to some of the governance around it. And if we look at Tesla, for example, it ended up in a lot of controversies because it wasn't just about emissions from Tesla, but it was its supply chain. It was about safety issues. There was a sort of more comprehensive sustainability package that goes into this, where you seem to be, one can never address all facets of it, but you seem to really be thinking through, as you said, the sort of circularity of tires, what goes into it, who sponsors it. So the sort of E, S, and G of what we call environmental, social, and governance aspects.
Yeah, so I think when I joined the team in season 5, beginning of season 5, so 2019.
And what season are you in now? Sorry, what season?
We're just about to start season 11. So season 12. This thing's been going 12 years. So this is not new baby sport, but it's in that we've survived COVID. There's all these kind of things that have been hitting sports and affecting sports. So it is in the growth trajectory still, and aims to be a tier 1 sport across the countries. But I joined in season 5, so 2019. And at that point in time, we were thinking about what we might like to do. And we kind of weren't sure what we were focusing on. We had this amazing concept of Race Against Climate Change, which is our trademarked kind of climate advocacy forum, but we didn't know what we were doing with it. We got amazing speakers. We had Richard Branson, Mike Mann from MIT, loads of really cool people come along and talk at our events, but there was a lacking of action piece that came alongside it. So we really honed in when I arrived with the commercial director and really passionately believed that we needed to turn this into a movement and a vision for the team and put it behind it. And that became this Race Against Climate Change, this amazing program that we run around the world, engaging with governments, with climate pledges, with scientists, etc., activating at COP, activating at WEF, all of those other things that are really fun. But behind all of that, and I fundamentally believe this is just, every business has to have this. Behind all of that, we had to do our own homework so that we knew what we were measuring. So we started off taking what I thought at that point in time was a good approach, which was biggest emissions factor for us is travel. So we did scope 1 and scope 2, and then we looked at business travel, essentially. And we did that, patting ourselves nicely on the back, shouting about it across the rooftops, thinking we were pretty great, until I went on maternity leave and had a baby 2 years ago. And I had 6 weeks mat leave because I loved my job and I was excited to get back to it. And my team were very supportive around me, kind of coming back to work with a newborn or with a little baby. And in that 6 weeks off, it just dawned on me that we were way behind. And all we were measuring was the stuff that was easy to measure. And actually, it was time to suck it up and to do the hard stuff. And then that's when we went through, and we've just spent the last 2 years doing our full scope 3 assessment. And I have to be really open and honest about it. For us, it's not as challenging as it would be for some other businesses. We're mandated on where we can buy our car from, our battery, our chassis, all of those things. And there's full life cycle assessments that are undertaken by Formula E, the governing or the promoter of our sport. So from my side, it's not as hard as it seems, but in a 45 people team, depending on where we're at in the season, it's hard work to get all of that data together and to commit the time and effort to do all of that. But you kind of have to. Yep. You have to do those. And I'm hoping it's a kind of, if we say that we've done it and it's hard and we get it and we share our learnings with others and invite people to ask us how we did it, we're happy to talk people through the consultants we used, the Excel sheets that we've created to get that. Because if you don't know what you're benchmarking against, you don't know how to reduce. You have to understand the full picture first.
And now you're getting at the heart of net zero, meaning when we use these type of terms, what do we actually mean, net zero? And what you alluded to, the scope through for our non-initiated viewers and listeners, obviously that's the indirect emissions. Right. It's everything that kind of the nuts and bolts that would go into your sport. And that's often where the biggest impact is. That's where most of emissions happen. And tell me a little bit about your lessons learned here, how they could be applied to sports more generally. Yours is obviously a fast-growing sport. You spoke of England Lionesses winning in the World Cup football. There are obviously a lot of other sports that connect people. What could those sports learn from yours? In terms of how do you get those 500 million people to do more than just view your sport? Is there something else they can do?
So we ourselves as a team very much pride ourselves on our fan base and engaging. So we run a program. So on our website, you can there's a carbon calculator. It's really important to me because, again, back to that, if you don't understand what you're trying to change because you haven't measured it, how do you know you've made any progress? So there's a carbon calculator on our website that you can go and take. And we also have a program where you can make a pledge. You make a commitment to do something that's better for the planet. And then we follow up with you. We plant a tree on your behalf to make a difference. So there's a financial impact for us if you join us on this journey, but then go from there. I think the biggest thing though, that and we as sports organizations are actually pretty good at this. We are competing on track, but off track, working together to build that momentum. I think the key thing that we can do is gatekeep access to our athletes and our teams less. So, if I've got a driver who's really interested in, or I don't know, there's someone else, there's a basketball player who's really interested in this, let's let them all talk about it. Then that is really fundamentally very different for us when we have rights and sponsorship and there's those barriers and protections against each other. But really for me, it's around the best cut throughs we get are the collaborations. So we did an amazing collaboration with Palmeiras, one of the sports teams over in Brazil. It was incredible, really interesting team. I tried really hard to do something with one of the US-based, Miami-based teams earlier this year. We didn't make it happen, but gosh, if only we could, because actually that just gets a whole other bunch of people having a think about these things in a different country with a different set of values. And if one or 10 of them just make one small change. Okay, do you know what? I'm not going to eat meat on Mondays.
Yeah.
Amazing. Right, let's crack on.
And what have you seen? You mentioned Brazil. You're obviously a global sport. I know you have a huge viewership in China. Have you seen any differences in terms of your fan base, what they care about when it comes to sustainability? Are there sort of some trends there that you're seeing that could...
I'm afraid that I am not sophisticated enough in terms of the analysis of our data. If anyone is and wants to get involved with us, please come and give me a shout because we'd love to. But at this point in time, no, it's more around the personalities. So it's trying to capture those personalities and make sure that we, at the moment, we don't translate all of our messaging in country. I'd love to be able to do that. We run this incredible series of Instagram shorts called Race Against Climate Change at Track, where we interview fascinating people for really short sound bites. I'd love to be able to translate those to be able to push them out in
Cantonese and
correct.
And big,
because it's just like we ask questions like, what's your plastic straw moment? Kind of what's the thing that you have suddenly dawned on you? I can't do that anymore. I can't. It's no longer appropriate to drink out of plastic straws. What's that moment for you in your real life? That I think are interesting questions for people.
Do you think part of your success has to do with that, even though sustainability is a driver and it's an important part of your platform, your sport or your purpose is about something that's fun, right? So often when we speak about climate, it's quite serious. It's a little bit doom and gloom. We're coming from, although successful in its own right, the whole sort of Greta Thunberg movement was about a very dystopic climate view, which is still there, meaning it's not obviously gotten any better, but you were taking people and mobilizing them through something that is more fun, that is something about a sport, and then you're sort of getting sustainability in there at the same time. But it is still something that, young people or old people shouldn't feel guilty about, as you said. So is that maybe a key success here, that we were sort of centering around something that is fun, and climate is still a very serious matter and serious business, but it's mixing it in with something that is uplifting?
For sure. So it's sexy, right? Motorsport is sexy. Sexy and sustainability are not always...
Especially when it has zero emissions.
Correct. It's not always those things that fit together, but you look at the cars, they are beautiful. They're beautiful machines. They're run by as few people as possible that travel around the world because we want to be as efficient as possible. The freight is set so that we move in the most efficient way around the globe. No one's interested in that, really. They just want to look at the cool cars. But yet, when you look at the cool cars and you watch the incredible overtakes on the track in Monaco, it's something insane, like 160 overtakes on a track where normally you get next to no overtakes if you watch a different sport that does it. And we're burning no dinosaur juice. There's no fossil fuels being, kind of wasted on just whizzing round and round in circles.
And you yet have top speed. I understand, like, you have max speeds up to 320 kilometers per hour, which is sort of up there with the fastest cars in the world.
And we have one more season of this car. So it's faster 0 to 60 than a F1 car at the moment. Wow. But going into next season, then we haven't got this. They're testing at the moment, but for season 13, which is in a year's time from now, so 2026, we will have the fastest cars in the world racing around incredible tracks. And that will bring its own challenges and problems. Like, can we still race in city centres, which is an essence of the sport because it's bringing the sport to the fans versus making them travel out to tracks? Can we still do that and be safe? I don't know. Possibly not, because the street furniture in Monaco means if you're going as fast as we think we could, I don't want to be killing anyone as just for a motorsport. That's not acceptable. So there's lots of safety concerns and other things that'll need to come into it, but they'll be beautiful and fast. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's exactly that. How do you get that passion and excitement about something when you know that you're watching something that's also not damaging the planet? Win.
And Jennifer, what about, so motorsport still, when I hear it, I think a lot of people hear it, that they're still associating this with emissions, with Formula One or other sports. But if you were going to sort of change one thing tomorrow in global motor sporting, whether it's your own or the sport in general, that could accelerate sustainability, what would it be? And it could be also something that you're not able to do in your sport at this stage. What's the one thing you would do tomorrow?
I mean, the easiest one, number one, is just it needs to be a sustainable fuel, right? So it either needs to be electrified, it needs to be hydrogen, it needs to be, it needs to shift across so that we're not burning fossil fuels for entertainment. That just seems, straightforward to me. But if that's not achievable in the timeframe, because we know the vast amount of investment that is behind some of those sports and we know the movement that's behind them, I think those sports have to start acknowledging the things that they are doing that are not good. So instead of telling me stories about how they are, using SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, to travel drivers around, or they are using some element of sustainable fuel in their engines, why don't we just stop all of the, I don't know a French word for it, but stop all of the rubbish and actually just fess up to what we are doing that's bad and what we are doing that's good, and be much more open book about it. And then I can make a choice as to whether or not I want to watch something that I think is doing something that's not so great for the planet, or something that is good for the planet. And the other thing I think would be important is let the drivers or the athletes have some other opinions. Let them speak about this. You saw Sebastian Vettel was very, very vocal, and Nico Rosberg. There's a whole load of those drivers that have gone on to then talk more about how it didn't sit well with their internal beliefs and their lifestyle. Why aren't we allowing people to have those, expressions? And I know the answer, but I just would like to kind of push to say, we've got to change. This can't carry on. So how do we bring those voices and help them through?
And I guess what's so interesting about motorsport is you have the alternative technology, you have the emissions-free technology, because in other industries, you mentioned aviation, yes, SAF is going to be important, but it's still quite far out. We're talking many years until we can replace fossil fuels with sustainable aviation fuel. There's some very promising breakthroughs, but it's going to take a long time. And the same with long-haul shipping. There's definitely some very exciting things on hydrogen, on synthetic fuels, etc. But we're still some
But
way
how
out
about
when it
if
comes
we
to the
were
technology,
asking
but here
those
you have it. It's right there. It's
Yeah.
in front of you.
But what about though if you're Lewis Hamiltons of the world, or Carlos Sainz, or Sebastian Vettel, or Sebastian Buemi, my driver, or what happens if, or Joel Eriksson? What happens if those guys were asking those questions on TV, like, hey, what's the class of, what's the type of plane I'm traveling in? How efficient is that type of plane? Like, it doesn't take very many times of someone asking those questions to then mean that you can influence some change. And at the moment, people don't know to ask those questions. So they're not in a position to do so, which means no one's pushing for change in those areas. Whereas I think if we could make that more mainstream, then you're still going to travel, but you'd pick something that was a more efficient route. It seems logical, especially if it's on a cost comparable basis.
We're obviously at a difficult time, or we could say diplomatically, a juncture when it comes to sustainability and climate and everything that's happening. And why do you think more people are not speaking out? Or is there sort of a fatigue? Is there something that is hindering them from doing it? What's going on from your perspective? When it's even more important than ever, yet we're maybe hearing not so much about it. Greta Thunberg is sort of almost something of the past. It's not front and center like it used to be, climate and net zero.
And that's, and Greta Thunberg is not the past, is she? She's absolutely someone who's still advocating for things going forward. I suspect that it is a combination, the fatigue, but also there's so many other things that are, you look at the high that we had for UK. For me, we revealed our livery at COP26 in Glasgow, and we had Johan Rockström, who's an incredible climate scientist, reveal our livery at COP. And then we activated in the green zone and the blue zone at COP with a car that we built out of recycled plastic that children had collected, and then we built into this model car. That was like incredible peak moment, right, for us, COP26. And after COP26, then we've had COVID. We've had the war in Ukraine. Now we've got the awful things that are happening in Gaza and Palestine. I just feel like possibly there's this point in the world where we're going, this is all awful, kind of how do we do it? Whereas I think actually and then you've got the US elections and the noise that's created around the US elections. You've got change in policy in the UK, change in government in the UK, and our commitments to, we're lauded as incredibly committed in the UK to the UN climate commitments of Paris, yet we just agreed to approve and open a second runway at Gatwick.
Heathrow, yeah, or Gatwick, right. And there's the Heathrow discussion. But maybe coming back to what we discussed, though, maybe we've kind of got it wrong. We have to do it in a more subtle way. We have to sort of center it around something that consumers want to do, or people want to do anyway. They want to engage in sports. They, more than ever, as I think you alluded to in your opening remarks, given everything that's happening, sports, I can relate to this myself, even more important. I'm even more passionate about football than I usually am. It matters even more. Maybe that's the way. It's sort of, I don't want to say backdoor approach, but that we can kind of do something that's fun and you're still doing something impactful for sustainability rather than that being the front end here.
So we interviewed a wonderful chap, a chap called David Blood, who works at Generation alongside Al Gore. I interviewed him on stage at the London race this year in front of our guests. And his messaging was very strongly that sustainability it's just the better choice. It's not just the right choice. It's often the better choice. And I think it's those moments where you have to just create that positivity around it. And often, like we said at the beginning, it's both financially the right decision as well as a good decision for the climate. So you get to walk away feeling, really puffed up and happy about yourself on multiple choices. And it's, like you say, it's not about labeling things now as ESG or sustainability or net zero. People don't want to hear about that. They've got fatigue, as we've alluded to. I think they just want to know it was the right thing. They did the right thing. It was a good thing and the right thing.
And maybe on a positive note, you mentioned Generation, the fund led by Al Gore and David Blood. They released recently their sort of annual sustainability report, and one of their findings, which has been corroborated by many other recent reports, is that the long-term trend actually on energy is positive, meaning that the energy mix is moving in the right direction in terms of renewables, whether it's solar, wind. It's making up increasingly a larger mix of the energy, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Texas. Astonishingly enough, Texas produces more clean energy than dirty energy. That milestone was reached last year. So there are positive things happening here that we're perhaps not catching because the headlines are pretty doomy and gloomy. And you mentioned Jan Rockström, obviously, he refers to these planetary boundaries where we keep crossing new planetary boundaries. And what he's also saying is, in the short term, there's no way back. Even sort of stopping emissions is not going to reverse this.
Tipping point reached on, insect collapse, etc. Yeah.
But remember, we're trying to stay positive here. So I think, so that's interesting. That if I sort of sum up what you're saying is we need to sort of mix this idea of having fun. Sports is a great way to do it. You can still have impact through sustainability. We need agency. That's something we've spoken a lot about on this podcast. So sports figures, be it motorsport or elsewhere, having them engage, speak out, engage their fan base on sustainability issues could be very powerful, very impactful, maybe even more than politicians who sort of beat the old drum about net zero goals that sound a little bit dull. Anything else that we can kind of be doing in a positive way?
I mean, it's back to individual action, pushing for this, but I think the thing that makes you feel good day to day is when you do something that is the right thing. So I think if we all start, we absolutely have to change the system, but on a day-to-day basis for my own, mental health, but also for my enjoyment of life, it's making the right decisions on a day-to-day basis. And I think we can all do that. We all have, kind of ownership of what we do as individuals.
And Jennifer, in sort of closing here, tell us what's happening next for Envision Racing in the race against climate change? Is there
we're just about to start testing the car for the last season of this of generation 3 of the car. So it's exciting times for us. We're planning everything out, and then for us, it's going to be. We've created this incredible advisory board, sustainability focused advisory board. So I'm going to be reaching out to those incredible individuals to spend a bit more time thrashing out what our target setting looks like. But on a fan basis, it is going to be a case of just constantly pushing out interesting and engaging sustainability facts, sustainability information, and a bigger push on our climate pledges. So please, visit the website, take a pledge, we'll plant a tree, and then we'll be in touch around other things that we can do together.
And we'll be sure to post that in our show notes for the podcast here. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on and
thank you.
Letting us learn more about the role of sports and guilt-free motorsport. I really like that title.
Good. Lovely to see you. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Sustainable Edge. If you found today's conversation inspiring, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. It helps more sustainability leaders find us.